1-800-722-7705.
It's time for the Playmaker Spotlight with Executive Coach and Vistage Chair, Dick Smith.
Well, welcome again to the Playmaker Spotlight, the part of the Get Down to Business radio show where we speak to CEOs and business owners and share their stories and best practices with you, our listeners. Playmakers is brought to you in part by Vistage, the world's largest CEO advisory board organization, and I am your host, Dick Smith, the CEO business coach, and I'm an award-winning chair for Vistage International. And tonight, I'm thrilled to have as our guest on the program Mark Weirda, president and founding member, and Nathan Uno, brand strategist of Cultivate Studios, headquartered in Chicago. And from their website, Cultivate Studios is a brand and design agency. They are a team of thinkers, designers, technologists, and storytellers focused on making great things happen. Cultivate Studios helps organizations overcome challenges, seize opportunities, and create engaging brand experiences that add lasting value. By exploring and uncovering an organization's core identity, Cultivate Studios can build creative strategies that solve problems and affect change. So once again, please welcome Mark Weirda and Nathan Uno, brand strategist. Welcome to Playmakers.
Thanks for having us.
Hey,
Thanks.
guys. Mark, tell us a little bit about your background, because you were one of the founding members and started as an entrepreneur.
All right. Well, I think that entrepreneurial spirit was impressed on me at a pretty young age. I had the good fortune of both of my parents growing up were self-employed. After school, got to help my dad at the feed store in a small town in the corner of Montana. But I think the work that my mom did was most interesting to me. She was a photographer. Oh. And really any opportunity I had to grab the camera, to shadow her, to get into the dark room, that really caught my attention. I decided eventually to come to school out here in the Chicago area. And I think by my second year, I had filed articles of incorporation to start my first photography business. And,
good. So it's in your DNA being an entrepreneur.
A little bit like that, I suppose, yeah.
What was your degree in, and how did you decide to co-found Cultivate? How did that all tie together?
So I was a business major with a kind of an art minor, so I really enjoyed the kind of the mix of those two things. As it relates to founding Cultivate Studios, I guess at age 22, I landed what I think was the perfect job. I went to work for Ozinga Brothers, the concrete company, the familiar red and white stripes. They've
been on our show.
They have, yeah. They didn't let me drive a truck though. But I was commissioned to travel to some fascinating parts of the world to use documentary photography and video work to tell the stories of some of the humanitarian organizations that they were sort of supporting and interested in. I can't think of a better way to spend my early 20s. That was really fascinating, and so I think.
So when did you get the entrepreneurial seizure that you had to leave them and go on your own?
Well, it was actually kind of during that experience. That was when we started kicking around the idea, well, how can we actually take this dream job and keep it going?
Yeah.
And so along with a couple friends I met from college, along with the backing and support of Ozinga, we actually together got the idea to start Cultivate Studio. So they've been very instrumental in sort of establishing
and
our
as
business.
A client as well. Yeah. So how many other founding partners are there? There
was two others, graphic designer Chris and a video producer Brett.
And how many years now have you been in business?
We founded in 2005. We're heading into our 12th year.
Gotcha. How many employees now?
15.
Good for you. All right, let's move on to Nathan. Nathan, you're the brand strategist. So what the heck is brand strategy or brand? Help us with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. When you talk to people about brand, people have different ideas about brand or talk about brand in slightly different ways. For us, brand is really the perception that an audience has of who you are. And we think there are two things that are important to keep in mind with brand. The first is that brand is, whether you know it or not, or like it or not, you have a brand. The question isn't, do you have a brand? The question is, do you know what that brand is?
Yeah. And is it by design or default, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the second thing, is that brand happens. That perception evolves over time. And so the question isn't, is your brand changing? The question is, are you actively working to shape that brand, or are you allowing your brand to be shaped by outside forces?
There you go.
So brand strategy is a way for us to get you from how you're perceived today to how you'd like to be perceived or think you ought to be perceived.
Gotcha. So tell me a little bit about the typical client engagement. What does that look like for Cultivate Studios?
Yeah, so the funny thing for us is that typical means unique. We work with different kinds of clients all over the map. Profit, nonprofit, small business, large business, all kinds of different markets. Yeah, anywhere from construction to jewelry to healthcare. So what we do with all our clients is, even though each engagement is unique, we treat them the same way. We sit down on the front end, we run a strategy workshop, and we try and dig into who are you, what do you do, why do you do it, why is it important, and where are you trying to go? And from that, we develop a strategy that then informs all of the other creative work that we do, whether it's we shoot video or we do website or we do print collateral, billboards, whatever that is. We can do all of that work informed from one centralized strategy.
You touched on a nerve when you said why. One of my favorite authors these days is Simon Sinek. And his book,
absolutely.
Start with Why.
Yeah, I was listening to him on Debbie Millman's podcast yesterday.
Yes, certainly absolutely. Very impactful for the culture and for your customers.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, this is the Get Down to Business Playmaker Spotlight, brought to you in part again by Vistage International. And I'm Dick Smith, Vistage CEO Chair, and we're talking to Mark Weirda, President and founding partner of Cultivate Studios, and Nathan, brand strategist. So who wants to answer this one? How would you describe your company's culture? Maybe we should throw that at Mark, huh? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that one. The crazy thing for us is that we have this really eclectic, talented group of people, technologists and handletters and illustrators and all of these crazy people. So we wanted to develop a culture that allowed us to maximize sort of the ability for them to apply their talents to solving problems. So we took a step back and said, well, what are the values that we want to drive our organization to shape that culture? So for us, we settled on creativity, collaboration, independence, and excellence. And those are the things that really inform all of the work that we do. Creativity obviously is required for the work that we do, but we want to do that collaboratively while at the same time allowing each person to express their individual talent, always in the pursuit of excellence. So that's really how we shape our culture.
Good for you. And I say about values, if you can talk about where they're manifested on a daily or weekly basis at least, with your people, then they're real. If not, they're just a bunch of words. So you guys do that?
Absolutely. Values for us culture is how values are translated into behavior.
Yes.
So we have a culture document that says, here are the 4 values, and then here are the behaviors that we expect to see expressed because of those 4 values.
Gotcha. So tell me about unique experiences or areas of special services that your organization provides.
So what I think is interesting about us is that we don't believe in formulas. We don't believe in 7 steps to success. It's just not that straightforward. So what we do is we build models that help us understand how things work. And then we work with clients to help them understand how things work, so that when we develop a strategy with a client, we're walking them through the models that we've used to develop that strategy so that they can continue not just to take that strategy and run with it, but continue to develop that strategy and continue to understand their organization in interesting and really deeply meaningful ways.
All right, let's get Mark back involved there. Mark, so what does your ideal profile customer look like? You should be able to articulate that as president.
Sounds good. I think for us, we found, even though our engagements range from startups to established companies, I think for us, we find that we work best with companies who have an established revenue stream, who are looking to kind of maybe break from kind of where they are right now into some new territory.
Take it to the next level.
They need to get from where they are now to somewhere else, and I think that's where we're ideally suited. You typically work well with companies who are sort of small to medium size. That just kind of fits the profile of
number
of
of employees staff. For a good profile company, 20 to 50, 100, 200?
We would say probably 25 to 200.
Okay, good. All right. And let's go back to Nathan. Tell us about this thing, identity and position, that you guys talk about on your website.
Yeah. Identity is really who you are when you take everything else away. And who you are isn't what you do. It's why you do what you do. Why is that important? And then position is how you articulate that to the outside world. And position is really relative to competitors. So you position yourself relative to competitors, and then you message that position, you nuance that position to different audiences in different ways. Right. So if you take Nike as an example, Nike's message, or position rather, is that they're to bring inspiration and innovation to everyone. Right. That's their position. But they nuance that position to different audiences, to the golfing audience, to the female audience, to the professional athlete audience. They nuance that message in slightly different ways.
Right. If you saw the movie, Steve Jobs talks about taking a bite out of the universe at Apple. That's a great why, and it's very strong and powerful.
Absolutely.
All right, real quick, we're almost out of time. So, Mark, what's the vision for the company, say, 3 to 5 years from now?
Well, I think we really like the size of the team that we're at right now, although I think for us, we really want to extend and push these models that we're developing to understand kind of how it is that we solve these problems and to allow our clients to really sort of engage with them.
Good. So how can our listeners, whether they're looking for a job with you or they're a possible prospect that turned into a customer, how can they get a hold of Cultivate Studios? What's the best way?
I would start at our website, cultivatestudios.com, and give us a call, send us an email. We'll be in touch.
Great. Well, I'm afraid we're just about out of time, but once again, I'd like to thank Mark Weirda, president and founding partner of Cultivate Studios, and Nathan Unope, a brand strategist at Cultivate Studios, for being with us today. So thanks again, Mark, Nathan. I'd like to thank our listeners for tuning in. This has been the Playmaker Spotlight with me, your host, Dick Smith, CEO, business coach, and award-winning chair for Vistage International. You can find me on LinkedIn or email me at dick.smith@vistagechair.com. Stay tuned now for more of Get Down to Business with my friend, Shalom Klein.